Hello and welcome to the Smarter Conversations podcast, where we'll be weaving together voices from the cotton supply chain. This podcast is brought to you by the US Cotton Trust Protocol. I'm your host, Kathy Smith. I'm an independent freelance journalist. This podcast series does exactly what the name implies. I'm going to be talking to some of the key movers and shakers in the global textile supply chain to dig into the world of cotton. Well, this is the fourth episode in our series, and we're focusing on tracking data for sustainability. And most people agree that you can't improve what you can't measure. But what does that mean actually in practice in the cotton supply chain? Well, joining me today to discuss this is Alison Thompson from the organisation Field to Market. Alison is Vice President Science and Research and specialises in tracking field data and bridging the agricultural sector with the market. So hello to you, Alison.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
And I know you're going to tell us a bit more about Field to Market in a moment. And Kellen Lee is a cotton grower based in Louisiana. He can give his perspective on how data tracking works on the ground. So you've just come out of the fields, I think, Kellen, have you?
Yes. Hi, Kathy. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we have. We've gotten all of our crops out. We've had a really fair weather fall, so we've gotten all of our field work done and gotten a lot of cover crops planted, and most of them are all up, and everything's looking really nice down here.
Yeah, so tell us what you're seeing. If you walk out now, just paint the picture for us.
It's about as clear of a day as you could write up. Sun's shining. Like I said, it's been pretty dry for the past few weeks, and it's about 68, 70 degrees. It's a very nice fall weather right now in our area.
And how many acres have you got?
We farm about 4,500 acres total.
Wow. Wow. So tell us about tracking, because that's what we want to talk about. Why is tracking important? I mean, in a way, I suppose it somehow kind of provokes action. Is that really the point of it?
Absolutely. We first got involved with Field to Market and the U.S. Trust Protocol. It really started showing us some of our sustainable practices that we were already uh, taking part of, and when we got to see that, we could start to look at things that we could change or other practices we could implement. And it really started with tillage and cover crops. We could start to really just shine a spotlight on things we could change and what the impacts actually would be. And without being able to track that, we really wouldn't know really a good direction to take that. And once we started getting the cover crops involved, that really started to make a good impact on our soil loss and our fields, our erosion. So tracking, once we started to track, that really set the pace for being able to go in the right direction.
So tillage and cover crops. So what else are you measuring?
Oh, we measure efficiency, diesel use, everything from all the way from our fields to the gin, and we're measuring even further than that. And every phase of technology, we'll get to measure even deeper. But seed technologies, precision crop protectant applications, variable rate technologies. We can track literally everything that we do and record it, and that's really starting to show some benefits for us and for the big picture as well.
And talking about the big picture, I mean, the Cotton Trust Protocol gives year-on-year data. So that data, I suppose, can help you to set targets for continuous improvements going forward. And that must be important.
It is. That's right. Of course, we all have goals. Um, Blind goals are one thing, but if while we're tracking this, we can actually see things that we could change. That we got the metrics in here. We can use it as a tool that'll actually give us a direction on. So we're not wasting time or making wrong decisions to find out the hard way. We can actually see things that we know will benefit us if we adapt those practices.
So how long does it take to have any impact then? I mean, what sort of improvements are you seeing?
Well, really, the first year that we have been doing some cover crop work, small scale, over the years, and we really didn't have any idea of how to measure or how our soil loss looked until we got into tracking all this, and we realized that it was pretty substantial. And within a year of implementing a cover crop and reducing our tillage, we could certainly tell the difference in our fields and our crop health.
So let me bring Alison in now. Field to market. Just tell us quickly what that is before I then ask you to explain a bit more about how the tracking actually works.
Sure. So Field to Market, we're a multi-stakeholder nonprofit organization. And what that means is that we work with all the different stakeholders along the agricultural value chain in the U.S. So that includes all the farmers, the farm organizations for cotton, as well as other row crops like corn and soy and wheat in the U.S. We work with environmental groups. We work with agribusinesses. We work with food companies. We work with universities and the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture in the U.S. So we're working with all these different organizations to develop a pre-competitive platform for this tracking, for measuring the environmental impact from farming.
And you're in Maryland, just near Washington, you say?
Yes, we're based in Washington, D.C., and I'm in Maryland this morning.
Great. Well, listen, to explain to us a bit more about the technology involved, how this tracking happens.
Sure. So what we have is something called the FieldPrint platform. And what that does is it's a technology tool that collects data from farmers. So farmers can go to a website and enter their information, or they can enter it through a farm management software tool that they're already using. We have some partnerships in place. So there's multiple ways for farmers to enter their information. And what they're putting in is just details on what they've done that year. So what Kellen was talking about, he would enter in, for each of his fields, what cover crops was he planting? What was the tillage regime? How much irrigation was done on that field? And we use that information and we combine that with environmental information on the soil properties for those fields, the weather in that year. And what we do then is calculate the environmental impact, and we calculate 8 different metrics that are tied to environmental outcomes. So this is where the multi-stakeholder part comes in. So the grower groups, in collaboration with environmental groups and the supply chain, have agreed on 8 environmental impacts that it's really critical to track and work towards improvements on. And I'll just list those out for you all. They're land use, irrigation, water use, energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, soil carbon, soil erosion, water quality, and biodiversity. And the key with these is that what we're trying to do is show, is track not just what a farmer is doing, but what that impact is on the environment. And that becomes really critical when you're working towards improving on those. And these are all science-based tools. So we have a metrics committee and a science advisory council that I work with extensively to make sure that we're plugged into what's going on in the research realm, what the most recent research shows, what the most recent tools are that are being developed, so that we will refine those metrics over time. We can give our farmers access to the most accurate and scientifically robust tools that we can on their environmental impact.
But actually measuring the impact on the environment is quite tough.
Yes, so it is. It's challenging. We're not able to do direct measurements of all of these things. That's pretty extensive, but we're able to give, I think, pretty good estimates of that environmental impact. And the goal there is to get at that continuous improvement. And one of the key things is that it's not just one practice that you can adopt universally that we recommend a farmer use for improving on these. What we want is for farmers to take the information they get and work with their trusted advisors and see what practices make sense for their operation. So Kellen, we're not going to, say he needs to go out and plant a certain type of cover crop all over his acres. That doesn't make sense. But he, as he said, he's tried it out on some acres and seen what works. He's seen what drives change in the metrics, and also what works, just for his operation and all the decisions he has to make on a day-to-day basis. And that's what we want is for farmers to use this in a way that they get to make the decisions about what practices to adopt that fit in with their broader operation, because that's what sustainable change is giving them that control over it, and giving them also access to the science and advisors to help understand the potential impacts of the changes they could make.
And of course, tracking's one thing, but you have to set targets, I assume, to actually really know where you're going.
Yeah, so tracking is the first step, measuring where you are. And then as you mentioned earlier, working towards that continuous improvement. So the idea there is work from where you currently are to improve over time. So again, we're not setting a specific target for all farmers to reach, but you want to be improving from where you are. And where targets are coming in to be really important are at a more like industry wide. So cotton through the Cotton Trust Protocol in the US has set targets for cotton as a whole within the US. You see companies setting corporate sustainability goals for where they want to move their supply chain. They may want to see reductions in greenhouse gas emissions or improvements in water efficiency or other targets that they're setting. And that's really, I think, what gets folks engaged then in going out and working specifically towards specific goals. So you do need to have that direction in order to be really driving towards improvement and change and really helping individual farmers achieve that continuous improvement.
So, Kellen, have you set your own goals and targets, or are you taking those from the Trust Protocol, or how does it work for you?
Absolutely. Well, when we first started expanding our cover crop situation, and then not only just covering as many acres as possible, we started being able to really look at timing. So then it wasn't just, okay, let's get our cover crops out there, in the fall and terminate them when the time comes. The actual emergence of the cover crop timing makes a big difference as well. So when you have a crop in the field, say it's cotton, when we harvest it and come in there to do whatever tillage work we're going to do that fall to it, if any at all, the sooner we can get that cover crop on it, the better. And that way there's least amount of time without vegetation on our fields. And the root system, the organic matter that helps our soil health a lot. And looking at that was really a lot of our goals we wanted to look at, and then moving forward, a lot of our precision applications, site specific applications, where we're only applying our crop protectants where we actually want them instead of broadcast or and off target situations.
So, did you learn quite a lot through doing this? I mean, have you been surprised by what you found when you've actually got the data rather than just sort of general observation?
Yeah, absolutely. It was eye opening. Things you really didn't have any idea that we could actually track, or things we could measure. You all were before this. We're really just looking at our neighbors, comparing notes. We all live in our own little niche, I guess. And this really brought it to a big picture and gave us some options, gave us some things to look at that we never would have considered if it wasn't for being able to look at field and markets practices or different measures, different options of things to look at.
So, what would be an example of that? Something you might not have thought of before that you've suddenly really realized is important?
Right. Well, certainly the precision part of it. That the efficiency that you don't realize how inefficient you are until you start measuring and looking at other ways that you could narrow it down. So applying fertilizers where they're actually needed, and maybe reducing it where they're not needed. Same thing with crop protectants. You could really just apply them only where they need to go. Those type of options that we knew were there. You just really don't realize how efficient they'll make you in the long run.
That's interesting. And what about the trust protocol itself? Has that really made a difference? Has that been welcomed by the cotton growers around there?
It has. I've been involved with the Cotton Trust Protocol for a few years now, and we through the pilot, and it's being accepted very well in our community. We've kind of like to think we've been kind of pioneering a lot of it as we've moved along here in North Louisiana, and these guys are all willing and excited to be a part of it, and to try to get paint our picture, tell our story, and really let the consumer and the brands and retailers know what practices, what we're doing to try to be as sustainable as possible.
That's great. Well, and Alison, I mean, we've already heard the phrase precision farming there from Kellen. And there's so many technological developments happening in the world of agriculture. So how do you see tracking developing in the future? Because I presume the technology is developing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course. I think that's a story across many industries, but certainly in agriculture, what we see and what we work with a lot are farm management software companies there's really a number of different private sector tools and some being developed through in a nonprofit sense as well that farmers can use to track their operations, track their information. And we've developed partnerships with 6 of those right now where they can offer our metrics alongside the other information they give to farmers. So what that means is a farmer wouldn't have to go to a website and create an account and enter all their data from scratch, but use the system they're already using, right, for managing their farm, and be able to generate their field print metrics from there. And what that really helps also to facilitate is tracking by companies, right? Tracking by groups like the Cotton Trust Protocol or by companies, because our system is also designed for food companies, for example, or apparel companies who are interested in the footprint of their whole sourcing region to track data from all the farmers in that region or from a subset of farmers enrolled in a project who've agreed to collaborate with that organization. So really, that technology has really helped to facilitate the scaling of our program to reach more farmers and to enable more companies to track more of their sourcing area. So it's been really critical there. There's a lot happening as well with those companies. A lot of innovation using different tools to help gather that data more efficiently. Help populate a lot of the data that's required for calculating our metrics. Without having to ask too many questions of the farmers. They're very busy. They don't want to come home at the end of a really long day and sit down at a computer and enter a lot of data. So everything we can do to get that information in without, requiring that can really help also drive more participation in the program and more insights.
So how does it work on the farm then, Kellen? Are you able to adapt quickly to new technologies? How frequently would you be able to upgrade if new technologies are coming on the scene?
Right. Well, these technologies that we're talking about on the software side, they update about as often as our cell phones, and which can be difficult to keep up with. But with most of all the latest equipment in our tractors, our harvesters, all of these we'll have little computers really in there, and they you got to enter in exactly what you're doing on that operation. It's taking in weather data, your location. It's recording a lot of this information that we use for field to market or the U.S. Trust Protocol. So, like Miss Allen said, when these are all working together, that saves a farmer a lot of time. So that's the main thing. Moving forward is keep this as user friendly for the grower, and the easier it is to move this data over or to collect it all to get it where it needs to be, the more participation we're going to have, and that's exactly the direction we're going. And it's not as difficult to keep up with because all of our equipment nowadays is pretty well coming ready with it.
So would you say that this, I mean, I know that you've been working on, the sustainability issue for quite some time, but there's quite clearly a really new focus on it in a way. I mean, there's a greater emphasis. Would you say that that is giving cotton farmers more pride in what they're doing, or that they feel more linked with their customers or with their brands, or, how has it changed the whole world for you?
It has, for me personally, it's really been able to sit down at the same table with consumers and brands and retailers representatives, having these conversations. If we weren't all wanting to be more sustainable and have these goals together, we wouldn't be able to have being able to be in the same room together and talk about all this and work together on these goals. It's pretty neat. It has brought a lot of enthusiasm to the cotton industry in the United States, I believe, and it's gonna be what drives the United States cotton crop for the next generation, I believe.
Well, that's a great note on which to end our podcast. Thank you both very much indeed. Really great to get that sort of insight into what you're doing and how the tracking is working on the ground, on the farm. So thank you, Kellen. Thank you, Alison, very much indeed. And that is it for this edition of the US Cotton Trust Protocol's Smarter Conversations podcast. You can learn more about the Trust Protocol at trustuscotton.org. Next time, we're going to be talking with the Textile Exchange about their activities and their approach to sustainability. So I hope you can join us then. Goodbye.